All right, we are back. Man, it's been a while.
Yeah, how long has it been, dude?
Maybe like 2 months or so. I mean, we could check, but I'm too lazy to check. I mean, last time was in person, right? Was it?
Yeah, I guess that was in March. Pretty cool, dude.
Yeah, early March. Yeah, 2 months. All right, 2 months. Let's see. Podcast hour. Yeah, March 6th. What is this? May 12th. Yeah, 2 months. All right. A lot can happen in 2 months. All right, what's on? You gotta lead the way today because I've been 2
So I
months.
could talk about my trip to Omaha.
Oh yeah, yeah. Do you make any money?
No. I mean, we stuff is expensive there during the weekend,
Yeah,
but
yeah. So tell me about that. I'm gonna start writing some notes as we're talking, so I can take notes on the I can put on the show notes before why I'm doing it. Okay, so what is this thing on Omaha?
okay, so it's the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting, and so Warren Buffett bought this company called Berkshire Hathaway. I mean, most people know, but basically he took this textile company and then used the assets to buy companies, and then that snowballed into now it's worth $500 billion, um, and so they have this annual meeting, and it's pretty cool because it attracts a lot of people who are interested in investing into one spot, and so oh, Phil, I can't hear you, man.
Oh yeah. What's the qualifications for going to the meeting?
Oh, you need to own at least one share.
Oh, okay.
So
So anyone can go, really. It's not like you need a bunch of shares.
no. I mean, I was surprised how easy it is. So as long as you own one share, you just have to send a form to their headquarters with your name and address, and then they'll give you a little badge, and then that's all you need basically.
And then you pay your own way there, I assume, and you just go.
Yeah.
So, like, do other companies, I mean, technically public companies, do they have to let all shareholders into some kind of meeting, or is this some special thing that they do?
I think so. Or at least if you want to, I think you could attend most annual meetings, but Berkshire's special because hey Phil, I hear an echo.
Turn this thing on. Okay, I'm gonna mute the other way, not using this mic. Okay, go for it.
Okay. So yeah, Berkshire is special because they actually encourage everyone to come. And so they rent out this huge stadium in Omaha. I guess the estimate was that 40,000 people were there. And the doors open at around 7 a.m. But then if you want a good seat, you get there early. And I think we probably got there a little too early. We got there at 4:30
Oh
a.m.
my God,
Yeah,
it's like a Taylor Swift concert or Wrestlemania or something.
yeah,
Yeah,
something like
40,000
that.
people.
I mean, the difference is that it's a free for all in terms of seating, right? So,
Yeah, it's like WrestleMania. That
but anyways, yeah. So when at 7 a.m. the doors open, and you still have to go through security. But then as soon as you get through security, people start running, right? But then they
oh my
have a lot of
God, it's a free for all.
they have a lot of guards along the way, being like, "Hey, don't run, don't run." But yeah, people are really excited, and it's really interesting because it's a lot of random conversations just happen because people are there and they're interested in the same stuff, and people overall in Omaha are really friendly.
I mean, are there are a lot of locals, or are there just these are people from all over the country there?
I mean, every from around the world, people show up to this meeting, but just walking around Omaha, you get a sense that Omaha's a pretty cool city.
Yeah, like the city itself. Yeah, I mean, it's very, kind of very different than the frenetic Bay Area scene where you have
You
self-driving
know,
cars running you over.
I was a little well, yeah. It's not like Bay Area is a little more hectic, but Omaha, it surprised me. I mean, I guess I'm ignorant. I hadn't really been to Nebraska. I didn't know what to expect, but it was more like Portland or Seattle or.
Yeah, I mean, didn't Google experiment with the Google Fiber high-speed stuff around there, or that was maybe Kansas, but like, there were, experiments around that area with this sort of stuff, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't know what to expect, but now that I've been there, I I have a very high opinion of that city. People there were super nice.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like just more broadly, we people talk about moving out of the Bay Area and Seattle to places like Portland or Austin or Boulder, Colorado, or Kansas City or Boulder, like I mean, or Omaha, because like these places. in these, tech hubs are so saturated and so expensive and it's starting to get absurd that, people are looking for these other places that are more livable, more affordable, but yet still have this, hopefully this critical mass of, entrepreneurial and tech sort of energy.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's so expensive here, places like Portland or Seattle or Austin, they're picking up in terms of prices, but I don't think Omaha has really experienced that yet. It almost felt like a hidden gem, and I was asking around like, oh, how come more people don't come here? And I think part of the reason is that they have a cold winter.
Yeah, it's like Midwest. Yeah.
Yeah, but other than that, I mean, I was only there for 3 days, so I can't have a fully informed opinion, but I loved everything I saw when I was
Yeah,
there.
this video is sponsored by Omaha City. Omaha City, board of, the local government is sponsoring this.
Hey, and one thing I want to mention is that on Sunday they had a 5K event. So it's like this race, right? And
everyone's running again, more running.
I'm so glad I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do the race, but then I decided to do it, and I'm so glad I did it because it was a huge wake-up call. Like, I am not in shape. I mean, I jogged and I finished the race, but I ran one like maybe 5 years ago, but then prior to that, it was really high school. And so my mental image was still like me as a high school kid running. Where
you're like, okay, I can do it. I don't have to train. I'll just, run 3 miles. It's okay,
That's right. Where, if I want to turn it on, I could turn it on, but like there was just nothing there. It was pretty bad.
I never heard about the 5K thing in relation to this thing. I mean, there's like the whole playing bridge thing, right?
That's right. So on Sunday, they have at their jewelry store, they have like a bridge section and a table tennis section. It's kind of cool. So the table tennis, there was this young girl who later on became an Olympian who, because she was 9 and she kind of randomly played with Warren Buffett at the meeting. And then Buffett's like, wow, this is a lot of fun. You should come back like every year. So that's kind of been a tradition. And then on the bridge side, I think Buffett and Gates were playing bridge earlier in the day. I missed Buffett, but like, I think Gates was there when I was there, but there were so many people who wanted to go to that side that security shut it off. I guess it was a fire hazard or something. So,
oh my God, it's just swarming. Yeah, I remember like a long time ago, the Microsoft interns every summer got to go to Bill Gates' house. Like they stopped doing that by the time I was an intern in 2009, I think. Well, because I think he wasn't really with the company as much anymore then. But but like in the old days, the interns, it was a tradition for the summer interns to go to his house and like they would, deck out his house and a bunch of the summer interns would come and stuff and like talk to Bill Gates and everything.
Did you hear anything interesting from that, or like what was the typical experience when you go to something like that?
I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember anything like, I don't, but I just remember this idea that there's a lot of people swarming around, right?
Yeah, I mean, because to me it seems kind of intimidating because you feel pressure to say something intelligent, but then like it's tough and you just say, oh, hello. And then I don't know. Would you embrace such an opportunity or?
Really not really. I mean, maybe get the selfie or something, go buy clothes for the selfie. But did I tell you I saw Casey Neistat?
No, what?
Oh, I was in Columbus Circle. This was in New York, and this is like the day there was like a fire, like a bomb threat in the CNN building in October. I was just in New York for work or for whatever, and then I met up with a friend, Henry Zhu, who we did a podcast with him, and we met up in this what is this called, Umami Burger, like a really nice burger place in Columbus Circle, right across the street from the bomb threat. And there's all these news vans around. They closed the street off, and then when Henry came in, he's like, oh yeah, like Casey Neistat's outside. He's just filming. He's just like filming background footage for his video. And then so then we decided, we both went outside and we saw Casey and I took pictures. I didn't like go talk to him or anything. Like I didn't want to disturb him. I think he was interviewing someone, right? He was like talking to a police officer or fireman or something. And like you can see he was like had a tripod set up. He was like taking some background shots, and then he did like some filming with somebody. So we didn't talk to him, but then we kind of like saw, but there wasn't a crowd. I mean, it wasn't like a swarm around him or anything. He was pretty unassuming because he's not like that big of a guy, right?
Mhm.
And it's just like in the fall. I mean, he's probably has like some winter jacket on and he has like a camera. It's just like some guy in New York City, right?
Did anything surprise you about seeing him?
Not really. I mean, I was just thinking the other day. I mean, I don't know why we got on this topic, but like I was thinking the other day that like nowadays with, back in the old days, like seeing a celebrity was like a big deal kind of, right? Like because not many people got to be on TV or got to be in movies. So like either seeing someone who was on TV and movies seemed kind of like magical, or
Uh-huh.
like if you get to be on a TV show, right? If you get to like be on the news or like get interviewed as part of a documentary, you get your family to tune in and be like, oh, like go watch at 7 o'clock Sunday. I have like a 1 minute segment. Everyone watches like, oh, you're on TV. It's cool. But now it's like there's like billions of videos on YouTube, pictures everywhere, YouTube, whatever. Like I feel like even if you see like celebrities, it's not I just personally feel it people probably don't think of it as big of a deal now, like for the most part. Cause like I think people are just so used to seeing people in media. Of course, like some people might still think it's a huge if you're a giant fan of like I feel like if you're a giant fan of somebody, it's a big deal, right? But like if you just like, I don't know, if you're in LA and you see some like random TV actor walking around Starbucks, it's not like a huge deal, right? Like they go to Starbucks, right?
I heard this one story. It was on some podcast, I think, but Tom Cruise was like having dinner or something, and like other celebrities were like, get on my way. I need to see Tom Cruise.
Oh yeah, Tom Cruise is a big deal. I think like Tom Cruise is like something else, right? He's like, that's like seeing the president or something. Yeah. Tom Cruise is another level. I'm talking about like, I guess what I'm talking about is that like so many people are on TV or reality TV or YouTube or whatever, like, or on whatever internet news sites or blogs or whatever. So if you see someone like, okay, like they're in the media somewhere, I probably scroll past them, right? But yeah, if you're like Tom Cruise, you're like, that's or Oprah or someone, like then you're huge, right?
But yeah, I completely identify with what you're saying, that in the old days, like TV was a special thing. And then I remember when the internet came up, and then you would see someone's like, oh, I know that person, but that doesn't count because he's on the internet, right? That's not a
Yeah,
real
he just runs a
celebrity.
website or something. It's like it's a different thing. But now I feel like it's all blurred because
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, now with like Netflix and all those shows, I mean, they're TV shows, but they're on online platforms. Like the line is so blurred, right? And like YouTubers are getting like appearances on TV shows, and like, TV people are going on YouTube and on, Twitch and Instagram. So it's like everything just feels so mushed together, it seems.
Yeah, like if you're on the Netflix show Stranger Things, like that's a bigger deal than being on some random show on NBC, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, internet is completely legit right now.
Yeah, it's completely legit. And like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I got on this topic, but yeah. So, what was your takeaway from the whole weekend? Like, what did you want to get out of it, and what was the purpose? And it doesn't have to have a purpose, but what was your reflections on it briefly?
Yeah, so initially it was just entertainment, right? Like, because Buffett's 88, Munger's 95, like this show's not going to be around forever, right? And so just I had watched a lot of YouTube recordings of this meeting, say 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and like it's I actually find the Q&A really interesting. Just the YouTube clips that I saw, I think the actual Q&A, it wasn't as engaging for me as some of, I mean, because the YouTube ones, it's like the highlights, right? Like if there was an especially insightful answer, then these are the ones that surface on YouTube. But I mean, overall, I went there just to see an event, but I came away meeting a lot of people that I wasn't expecting to meet. And I think that was, I think what I took away was that when you're in an environment where people are interested in the same topic, it's pretty mentally stimulating. And I think it's something that I want to pursue more in the future. And not so much the annual meeting, but just in-person events, talking to people. It's something that I feel like I don't do enough right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's like maybe talk a little bit about the conversations you have with stranger. I mean, part of it's probably like you're all there for this. You're all excited about this event, so it might have been easier to talk to them rather than just like going to a coffee shop and talking to some random guy at a coffee shop, right?
Yeah. So there's a shared context. So there's definitely an easy icebreaker. So one example of meeting someone was while I was waiting outside 4:30, you know, someone got there earlier than us, right? And like we made eye contact and we're just chatting. Oh, where are you from? They happen to be from DC, and just, you know, trying to figure out why they came to this meeting. Because I mean, it sounds very strange, right? To travel so far to, you know, see two dudes answer questions. You know, it's, you have to be a weird person to come to this event, and
Right,
so
right. It's like a pilgrimage of sorts. I mean, there's a tradition to it. There's a, you know, there's yeah.
yeah. When we actually grabbed our seats inside the arena, we were sitting next to a guy who was studying behavioral economics, specifically cults.
He was there to research he was as far as research?
Yeah. He was attending the meeting as part of his research, and it kind of made it kind of made me self-conscious because I'm like, hey, you know, like I don't want, if I'm applauding or something, I don't want him to be like taking notes saying, oh, this guy on my right is applauding at something that wasn't particularly insightful. Clearly,
Oh, man, and they're doing some chant or something,
yeah.
like, the crowd gets led in some chant and everything. But, I mean, my impression is that it's pretty low key. Is there, like, you know, Apple convention store? I mean, is there, like, cult-like traditions, or is it pretty just low key? It's like just talking?
I think that not quite cult-like, but in that direction, kind of. By the way, Tim Cook was there, and then like he was walking. So there's the arena where they're answering questions, and then nearby there's a like a convention center where the various companies that are under the Berkshire Hathaway umbrella have shopping booths set up. And Tim Cook was walking through the convention center, and like there's this like crowd of people kind of.
What are people doing? They just wanna take pictures? I mean, they're just taking pictures?
I think so. Yeah, they were taking selfies or whatever. Yeah, I don't. It looked kind of odd, but I
That's
mean, I
really
guess.
funny. I mean, that would've been an awesome thing to capture, like, just in motion, right? Like, if no one's really talking to him and you were just, like, following behind, you know, snapping the pictures.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. But as far as a cult, like, is it a cult? At the beginning, there's this montage of videos to kind of get people pumped up for the Q&A, right? And they have some videos that were custom made for the event, but then interspersed they have just commercials for the products, right? So
Yeah.
there's like a Coca-Cola commercial, there's an American Express commercial, and like you're watching it, and I don't know, maybe because there was so much anticipation, right? You get there at 4:30, and then like you're waiting, you finally take a seat, and then the show starts, and it starts with commercials, basically, right? And I felt especially susceptible to the messages that were coming in. Like, I'm like, wow, I crave a Coke, and like, oh, should I sign up for American Express? You know, like it was really weird because I used to consider myself as someone who wasn't really influenced by that type of advertising, but I completely felt it.
Well, 'cause you're, like, tired, you know, you're, like, tired, you're sleep deprived, you're,
Yeah,
like, you know, there's an energy there just because everyone is there, you're just like, "Let's just get in." Wait, that guy sat next to you was the one who's studying cults?
yeah, that's right, that's right. Yeah.
Out of all the people who sit next to it's that guy.
Yeah. And like after the commercials, there's occasionally an applause. And I felt really, I didn't applaud because I felt really weird. I didn't want the guy taking notes saying
But
like,
what was the applause? Like, just, like, it was, like, some after every commercial is an applause or, like
yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, I think at some point it kind of died down, but like people are so pumped up
it's
that
like a
like,
cheer, it's like, "Oh, yeah, the next one, go for it."
yeah, I mean, because the commercials were handpicked, right? They are more entertaining than the average
Yeah, it's, like,
commercial.
high quality, it's like the high quality commercials, hopefully.
Like the American Express was Lin-Manuel Miranda. I forgot exactly what the message was, but yeah,
It was like a
it
Super
had some
Bowl
entertainment
commercial, right?
value.
It's like high quality stuff, right? It's like Super
Yeah.
Bowl commercials.
But anyways, yeah, it was a fantastic weekend, and Omaha has good food too. I mean, they're famous for steak. I didn't have any steak, but they had an ice cream shop
Ooh,
called Coneflower,
wow.
and it was like organic and hipster, and like it felt like something you would see in Portland. But yeah, overall Omaha was really good.
Yeah, that's amazing. It reminds me of, Getting back to WrestleMania, which just happened. Um, so I've obviously never been to WrestleMania, but just listening to people talk about it, and reading about these spectacles, or I mean, just not just WrestleMania, right? Like large athletic events or entertainment event, or like a Taylor Swift concert or whatever. Like, it is kind of absurd that you go there in a giant stadium and like you're sitting in the back and you can't see the stage, right? Because the stage is like tiny in front
Yeah,
of you. And then it's just you just see a giant screen or a set of screens, and like, you just kind of you basically are kind of like it's better for you to watch at home, right? Because you see all the up close action and everything.
yeah,
But like what people describe it as, it's just that like that crowd reaction. Right? You're coming in, everyone's pumped, there's music, everyone's just cheering, right? It's like you can't even tell what's going on, but everyone's just so pumped, right?
yeah, yeah. I used to look at that type of thing as a negative, like you're losing control of your rational thought, right? Because you're being drawn in by the crowd. But I think if you harness that energy, for example, for entertainment value, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
just there to enjoy the show, it's a lot of fun. Or like I think just talking to people at the event, it gave me a lot of satisfaction. And like I think maybe part of that was the good vibe that was generated by having 40,000 people just kind of crammed into one area. So like, yeah, this kind of like mania or this
Yeah.
enthusiasm.
Well, but then there's an afterwards where you actually get to talk to people, right? So it's like if you're just in the stadium, you can't talk to people as much. So like, was there an afterwards, when did you actually talk to people and like, get some better interactions at afterwards?
So there's an intermission, right? So the Q&A has two parts, and there's an intermission, and like it's really weird in that just randomly, like for example, we had to stand in line to check in for the 5K, which was the next day. And then when you're in line, I don't know, you're just in the mood to talk to the person next to you and just see like what their story is, like why are they at the meeting, and yeah, like prior to the event, people said, "Oh, the annual meeting is a networking opportunity," right? But I'm like, oh, I don't schmooze. Like, am I really going to talk to anybody? But I talked to a lot more people than I thought I would.
Yeah, yeah. And it wasn't like there was a direct I mean, it wasn't like they were in your industry and you got network. I mean, these people are coming from all different industries, I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't. There wasn't really a professional, like a concrete
Yeah, there wasn't a
professional.
networking spiel. You didn't make your pitch or whatever.
That's right. That's right. So it was just genuinely enjoyable because there were no hidden agendas. It was just people connecting, and they came for the same event, so they have at least something in common.
Yeah, I mean, that way it's I feel like in that way it's better. This is more interesting because it's like it's better than like an amusement park. Because if you're in an amusement park waiting in line, you don't really talk to the random other families that are there. Because like, why are you here? Because we're at the taking my family to Disney World, right? It's like, okay, right? And everyone's just like, it's like amusement parks. Everyone's just to themselves, right? Because they're here with their families and it's their own thing, and you're waiting in line. It's hot and sweaty and stuff, and there's kids around. But like this thing, it seems kind of different because you're kind of all there. There is some shared context, but it's not like a super professional networking sort of. It's voluntary, right? It's a voluntary thing as well. So it's an interesting space. I think I mean, it's unique. I've seen people go to this, like Lee Lin, who was my friend from college, who started Rent Hop. I think we had dinner with him once. He was the one who like took pictures a long time ago. He went to this like 10 years ago or more. So I knew about that through him. I think he went every year, like, and he was big into like finance and investing
Oh,
and all that stuff. So I found out about that meeting through him, but that was like 10 years ago or whatever. And I think other sorts of these kind of New York City finance type people, they would, go to this more because that's, more their world, I think.
mm-mm. Did your friend talk about investing to you at all, or?
Not that much. I remember, okay, so this was like back in grad school, like, this is 2008, the carefree days where I spent the summer, like I just traveled a good amount in the summers, and I just crashed in his couch for like a few days in New York City, and I read Liar's Poker by Michael Lewis. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like 90s, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, that was classic. So I read that while sitting on his couch. I was just bumming around, and then he would be at work. I think he was working at D.E. Shaw or one of the, some hedge
Uh-huh.
fund then. And then he was moonlighting, creating Rent Hop or building his, side business, moonlighting. So he would just, go to work in the day, and I would probably be out or I'd be reading and stuff. And that night he'd come home, we have dinner, and he would talk to me all about like just like crazy Wall Street stuff at the time. Because this is I guess this is like right. Oh yeah, this is 2008. This is right before all the bailouts and all the crash stuff. This is
Uh-huh.
summer. It was literally like a month later that all the bailout stuff and all the stuff happened, I think. Yeah. So it was like at the height of everything. And and then he would be like moonlighting at home, just like coding on his, on his rent hop thing like late at night and stuff. And obviously I was like, it felt like such pure times.
What kind of crazy stuff did he talk about?
I don't remember, but I mean, I think he just gave it wasn't like crazy. I mean, I think the theme was that, Red Liar's Poker, it was that, in the 2000s, the stuff wasn't as crazy as in, 1980s Wall Street, right? It was
Yeah.
mostly these nerds who have PhDs doing the quant stuff, right? It was mostly very quant oriented. It was crazy in the sense that they were inventing all sorts of stuff, and it was so kind of fast paced and innovative that way. But it was just like a bunch of people like him, right? It was a bunch of, nerds with the computer science or physics degrees here. And like the trading floors were not like, Boiler Room or like 1980s
Uh,
Michael Douglas or whatever. Right? It was all just a bunch of guys at their computer, but everything was happening invisibly, right? And then all the crash happened.
Did he have a sense that something was going to happen?
I mean, I don't think he talked to me about that. I
Okay.
don't, but that by then it was like stuff was in motion, right? I'm sure it
Yeah,
was all
yeah.
over the news and all that stuff. Like stuff was already in motion with all the subprime mortgage stuff. I mean, this is summer of 2008, so it was already all, probably all in the news and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, very cool, dude. Hey, I wanted to talk about Warren Buffett's such a huge fan of reading, and I think you're less of a fan of reading, right? And so,
Me and Donald Trump, right? I'm in the Donald Trump corner. It's Donald Trump and me, and then Warren Buffett and you, and
so
Bill Gates too. And Bill Gates reads a lot. Yeah.
yeah, Bill Gates reads. Yeah, yeah. A lot of business people read a decent amount. And yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on reading, and because there was that article, right, by
Oh
Andy.
yeah, let me find that why books aren't effective or whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I just found that yesterday. I think people are sending that around. Um, yeah, I mean, I'll link to it and everything. I mean, I think that my mental model of the Bill Gates, Warren Buffett reading or your reading, the people who are interested in business type reading, I think it's similar to, I mean, I think there is a purpose, right? Even if it's to broaden your
yeah.
horizons,
Uh-huh.
it's to just understand. I mean, to be good in business, you want to understand certain sectors of the world, right? You want to have a broad knowledge of technology and history and culture and, politics and everything. So I feel like that, if you have that business or entrepreneurial mindset, that reading even broadly, I feel like you can absorb it. I think it is, observable. I guess what I was railing against a bit was just kind of this idea that these nonfiction books would be just generally generally, I don't say useful, but like appealing to most people because like even including, say, I would include myself in this category. Like if I were to pick up a, general nonfiction book that's substantive, and I would just read through it, like I don't remember much from it, right? I'm like, because I read a bunch of those books in grad school, and I didn't really have a reason for doing it,
Yeah.
and because it was way before YouTube, and like it was fine and all, but I think for the business side, there was the really immediate books, like the business books. I'm sure you get a lot out of because it's very immediate, and then even the broader books about society and history and whatever. I feel like you can still get stuff out of, right? Because you're in that entrepreneurial or investment or business mindset. But I feel like for people who aren't in that mindset, I don't know the value of reading a bunch of those books, really.
Yeah, I could try to explain why I think it's a good activity. So, for example, thinking fast and slow, right? The downside, or if I want to play devil's advocate, it's like, oh, I invest 20 hours reading this book, and the only thing I can say when someone asks me about the book is, oh, there are two systems in your brain, one that thinks fast and one that thinks slow, right? And it's like, wow, did you really waste 20 hours with, and that's all you can.
Recall, like
Yeah.
immediately recall. Yeah, you can't recall the science behind it or all the, you didn't learn the actual science behind it. You just recall the high level things. Yeah.
Yeah, but my feeling is that your ability to recall isn't a complete picture of how your brain changed, due to having read the book. I mean, so like thinking fast and slow, the takeaway I got from it was that there were certain exercises that you do where you might go into the book thinking, oh, I'm a rational guy. Like you give me two situations, or you give me two descriptions of the exact same situation, I'm going to react the same way, right? But no, like if you twist the words around, or you say 40% chance of dying versus 60%, like you can say the equivalent thing in a bunch of different ways. And I discovered by reading the book that I'm very susceptible, just like most humans are, to these differences in presentation, right? Like
You did remember something from, I mean, that was a very concrete memory from it then.
yeah. But my point is that like I could summarize that in like a minute, but like if
It was a feeling of seeing that. Yeah.
that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
Like you cannot internalize it purely by reading the summary.
Yeah,
That
I agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, so maybe that's a more useful book than any other ones. But like, all right, like something like Guns, Germs, and Steel or something, or like some of these Steven Pinker books about like how the mind works, or like history or whatever. Like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's cool and all. I guess it's like watching a History Channel documentary, right? Like that was tight. It was cool and all, and it was entertaining, but like, all right, that thinking fast and slow thing, I buy that because it's like, wow, that's like these cognitive biases that we have, and it's like, well, I see it on paper. Whoa, it's like an optical illusion almost, right? Seeing like an optical illusion, like, whoa,
yeah.
that blew me away. But like, I feel like a lot of these popular science or history books don't like blow you away in that same way. Maybe like you're like, oh, these civilizations really rise and fell because of gun, germ, steel. Like that was tight, but like it was like watching an epic movie. That was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll acknowledge that sometimes you read a book and you feel a lot smarter, like your brain got stimulated and you feel like entertainment value, and you really enjoyed it, and there's this intuition that you got enriched, right? But it's a little difficult to quantify, like exactly, like are you going to become more wealthy in the future because you had read that book? Maybe not, right? Or like whatever improvement in life you were seeking, like I could see why someone would be skeptical for some of these nonfiction books that it impacted their life.
Yeah, I don't think the purpose of these books is to be self-help either, right? I mean, these are popular books of scholarly work, which is great. I mean, it's great to have that in the literature, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't have no books. I'm not saying no one should have books. I guess what I'm saying is that like maybe other formats are just as good, right? Maybe watching an awesome Netflix series, Ken Burns documentary, or a YouTube, vlogs about this stuff, maybe that gives you that same effect of entertainment and some enrichment as reading this, dense book, maybe,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to say that books are strictly superior. I think the different media, they each have their advantages. I think the advantage of a book is that if you're a fast reader, you could kind of crank through it pretty quickly. Whereas like a video, even if you 2x it, like you can't really get through it that fast, right? And so the way I read books, I skim a lot, right? Like I'll try to get the gist of the book within a couple hours, and like it's that's for me personally, the appeal is that you can kind of it's a lot more efficient to kind of flip through a book than it is to flip through a video.
And do you feel like the flipping through, I mean, do you feel like the flipping through thing, like you actually are getting that value out of it? Or, maybe the
Uh,
danger of flipping through is that you don't actually get much out of it. And you're just like, oh yeah, this is cool. I just like skip through it.
yeah, I mean, like I think the advantage of skimming through it is that you can determine whether you want to invest more time into the book. Because I think a lot of people are hesitant to read because they feel like, oh, wow, I don't want to invest 10, 15 hours on this thing and I don't even know whether it's good or not. Whereas if you just get through it, then at least you could get an impression of what the book is about, and then you can make a more informed decision, like whether you want to keep on going.
So you've skimmed through books and then you're like, I actually want to go through and read it slowly.
Yeah. So for example, what was the last one that so like Thinking Fast and Slow, for example, I did not read the whole book, right?
Yeah, it's pretty big.
My mom got me that book, right? And then I went to the coffee shop with my wife, and then she's like, you know, you should bring that book because I think it's worthwhile and you haven't had time to look at it yet, right? And then so like it's pretty intimidating because Thinking Fast and Slow is a thick book, right? So I just kind of flipped to a random page and started reading, and I was very surprised to have my attention be, it was a pretty engaging book, and I think had I told myself, oh, I got to start on page 1 and I got to read the whole thing, I don't know if I would have ever started. But like that insight I got from the book, it's something that my attitude of being willing to skim a book, it gave me it lowered my inhibitions. Like I could actually do
So
it.
that implies that paper books are better then, right? Because it seems like that bar to skimming a Kindle thing may be harder because you're like, oh, I turn to like some random page and skim. But like a paper book, you really can just like feel it, right?
Yeah, I mean, Kindle I can skim too. So I would go to it's almost like clickbait. You go to the table of contents, you read the chapters, and like just which article title appeals to you the most, and then you click it. I mean, for me that helps me get started with a book is just pick the most interesting chapter title, read that chapter, see if you like it, and then if you like it, you could keep on
So you
going.
read a lot of books then. I mean, we talked about your whole reading list. So what is your level of, your amount of books you read nowadays? And what was it a higher amount earlier?
I mean, so right now it's maybe 2 a week or something.
That's
Like,
pretty good. That's pretty good.
I mean, if you were to quiz me on the books, I would fail, right? But like I said before, I don't think that necessarily means I didn't get any value from it.
Yeah.
I mean, the downside is that books are expensive, but for me, books replaced clickbait.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, it's not that expensive. I mean, like, I mean, it's like going out to dinner once, twice. Yeah, it's not super
It's
expensive.
not that expensive, but when you skim a book, sometimes you're like, wow, it starts to feel expensive. But I've gotten over that because just skimming books is so much. I feel so much better about that than reading clickbait. For
Yeah, I see. So like the other use, if you didn't do that, if you didn't just pay a few dollars just to skim those books for a few hours, you'd just be reading random trashy articles online.
That's right. I was too sensitive to the price, and so I
Yeah.
was spending way too much time on Yahoo.com when I could have been
Oh
spending
man.
time on Amazon.com.
Yeah. And like all those ads and all the low quality trash you're seeing probably just have a more negative effect than just paying the money.
That's right. It's not just the article content. It's the
The
ads.
trashy stuff around it, yeah.
That's
Or
right.
the
That's
linked
right.
articles, or like even if you say like block the ads or whatever, like that article will just lowbrow articles are just gonna mention other lowbrow things that are gonna
That's
lead you
right.
to other things. You're like, this is just like an ecosystem, right?
But yeah, Phil, that article that you mentioned, do you know the author Andy?
I don't know him, but I knew he worked at Khan Academy, and he wrote a few of these essays about their experiments with different learning interfaces. So he's written a few of these sorts of, I wouldn't say Brett Victor style, but these kind of Brett Victor style essays ruminating on learning technologies and such. And according to his bio, I think he left Khan Academy. He's just doing independent. And he's apparently working with Michael Nielsen on this, this interactive quantum computing textbook. And they're trying to experiment with like an interactive textbook where they give you quizzes and they remind you to do spaced repetition quizzes through email. So I think him and Michael Nielsen or others are trying to, they're independently brainstorming these sorts of future learning technologies things.
Once I read the whole article, I appreciated the point he was trying to make. I think the title was a little clickbaity, right? That like books don't do their job basically, right? Like,
Yeah, clickbait. Yeah.
I mean, what he was saying, as I understand it, was that the average reader, if you read, say, a textbook or a book, you don't really get that much out of it. And so what he wants to do is similar to the flashcards, where you
Yeah.
kind of repeated practice, but the spaced repetition so that you actually retain it. You intersperse like quizzes within your consumption of the material, so that like in the absence of that interactive part, you would have to, as a learner, take responsibility for when you self-quiz, so that you kind of make sure that you're actually following along. And so I get that. I mean, I think there is potential to create new forms of content that allow the average person to, get more out of it per hour when they're reading
Yeah,
it.
so when you're reading, in your cases, it doesn't have to be quizzing. It's not like, oh, cover it up and like, what did Warren Buffett say on the last page? But like
Uh-huh.
other stuff, like just self-reflection, right? Just tying it to your own prior knowledge. So I mean, just making up an example is if you're reading some like, I don't know, some business thing or whatever, you read a chapter and then you're like going to the gym and you're like, okay, like how did that chapter relate to like what I was just doing, like with my company? It's like, oh yeah, like I could see this link here and like, oh, what if like I tried this other thing and like, no, that would never work. That seems kind of weird. So like that sort of relating what you read to what you're doing in your work, like that's very active engagement, right? And that's something that,
Mhm.
if a random person, read a business book, they like read it cover to cover and like, oh, that's cool. Like, that sounds good. But like that engagement that you have with it is what, draws it. And so what kind of engagement do you think you have when you're reading all through all these sorts of books, if any?
I think what you just mentioned, it happens fairly often, where if you read the story of how some business was created, right, and then they encountered some challenge, and then typically they overcome it, because if you don't overcome it, there's not a book written about you. But yeah, I kind of subconsciously ask myself, like, is there a parallel between this story and my life, right, or my business? And then if so, it does the technique that they use, does that apply to me? And then if not, why not, right? And like that exercise might suggest, an alternative that, and it's tough. I don't really have a crisp example of like, oh, exactly when I read about Bill Gates and then he did
Yeah,
this
yeah,
and
no, but
then
I think the point is that it doesn't have to be direct, right? The point is that you're engaging with that material, right? It's not like you have to come up with something to change for your business. Even if you come up with nothing, the fact that you did reflect on it is part of the key, right? So like, and that's what I was saying in my email to him, like just my random notes is that like, maybe part of having these books is, and this is the whole, he even wrote this in his essay that like the point of having a class and a curriculum and an instructor around this is that it gives you some sort of purpose, right? Like whether the purpose is as simple as you need to take this class for your grade and you just got to do it, that's already a simple enough external motivator. And a better motivator is taking this class will help you, learn some skills that you can build up a portfolio and help you interview for a job or like whatever. So like it just gives you some kick and motivation so that, you know, if a random person grabbed the business book or whatever book and read it, they're like, okay, that was kind of entertaining. But because you have some kind of indirect reason to read it, you know, you have some reason to engage with it. So maybe one thing these business books or whatever can do is, in an interactive form, just say before someone, I'm just making this up, but before someone starts reading, just fill in some self-reflection questions like, what are you working on right now? Chapter one is about blah, blah, blah. Before you read the chapter, give me a time when you did blah, blah, blah. And then after you read the chapter, reflect on the answer you gave before. And, how do you think it relates to this? This sort of like light reflection sort of thing, just to give us some scaffolding or structure. Right?
yeah, I think depending on the book, that might make sense. But for example, like your PhD grind, right? You wouldn't want to, like, after chapter one, like, oh, what'd you learn? And like, how does this apply to your life?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. So there's also the artistic value, right? You don't want to turn this into like an activity guide. Right?
Yeah, I mean, even if your sole goal was to educate people, right? I still think it wouldn't. I don't know. Do you see do you see a situation where it would be appropriate to kind of put a Q&A at the end of each chapter of the PhD grind, or?
Well, I feel like that's just kind of cheesy, right? It's like I feel like that would kind of ruin the flow of the piece of art, right? But
I mean, 'cause yeah, yeah.
but I mean, I don't think it's terrible. I mean, if there's in margin notes, I don't think it's terrible, right? So like if you can read the book, so maybe this is like, multi-layered, right? You can read the book, just flow through, and then in the margin notes, I mean, that's why I like some of these works, some of these long essays that people write with the margin notes on the side, right? So like you can read the flow and the margin notes is, oh, by the way, like think about this thing or think about that thing. So like I can kind of see that when you have, an interactive online format, you can expand out certain notes or go on asides or have little discussions or whatever, right? I mean, none of this is super concrete, but I think the low tech solution really is to have some scaffolding, right? So some people have these. I mean, I guess I have issues with book clubs too, but my rant with book clubs was,
Yeah.
I'll give you a book club rant, but I think the optimistic view on this is like if you have a support group, right? Like if let's say you and several other people are doing businesses and stuff, and you're like, okay, this week we're gonna read blah blah blah, right?
Uh-huh.
And then we're going to actually talk about how this book relates to each of our things. It's like, all right, let's talk about how chapter 1 relates to you and you and you, and we start this roundtable about it. And then I feel like you actually remember the book. So a couple of friends that I have from college, we tried to have this book club thing a while back when I lived in the Bay Area. And we try to do it like every week, and then it just kept slipping, right? Because people got busy. It's like every 2 weeks and every month. And we stopped doing it. But we tried, 4 or 5 of us. We try to have a book it wasn't every week. It was like every 2 weeks or month or whatever. And we'd actually have a book to read. They weren't like crazy big, but like it was, it was like a decent sized book. And we'd read it and talk about it. And half of the time was just kind of horsing around, which was fun, right? It was kind of horsing around and just getting off topic. But like the problem with the reading groups, same thing with paper reading groups, right? In academia is that there's not really a purpose, right? So like, oh, I'm gonna suggest you read, Thinking Fast and Slow, whatever. It's like, all right, it's cool. Let's all try to read it. Let's just buckle down and read it. And then next month we'll talk about Thinking Fast and Slow. And you gotta talk about it. You're like, okay, that was cool. I talk about Thinking Fast and Slow, but it wasn't really relevant to anything. It's the same thing with like reading papers. Like, okay, like our research group, we're gonna like pick a paper to read every week, read it, and someone's gonna summarize it, and then we're gonna discuss it. And those paper reading groups always dissolve because it's like, what's the point of reading this in a group kind of thing, right? So it's my extension of just not reading in general. But anyways, all your thoughts on this ramble?
Yeah, I mean, the paper reading group, I can see how if you're reading a ton of papers, like I think for a group to function, if it's like really core to your field and like, or if there are like a few new students who really need to get caught up on like the seminal works, right? Like I think that could be educational, and the function of the group is to like peer pressure you into actually reading the.
Right, so that's more like training. That's like I mean, it's like a class in a sense. Yeah, I feel like reading papers for a class or a seminar makes sense because you're training someone new.
Yeah. But I agree with you. Like in a group setting where it's not really, where training isn't really the goal, like, yeah, I can see how these conversations wouldn't really flow because like, oh, how does Thinking Fast and Slow apply to your life? It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, or like, yeah. So I mean, it was fine. I mean, I don't mind doing it because there's a chance to just hang out with friends and stuff. But I feel like it would be a lot more relevant if, like, for example, I mean, this is another example. Like, I remember when I was interning at Google a long time ago. This is like right out of undergrad, right before the beginning of grad school. Like, some friends were there and they're like, all right, we're gonna, and this was back when we were really young, and they're like, let's go through the algorithms textbook and like just study some of it and try to do practice problems because like we're just interested in algorithms. Maybe it'll help with some programming interviews. Maybe it's just interesting because we're in college. I never did that because I didn't want to work hard. But like there are people who did that, and like I could see that has some kind of purpose. Are we going to read this chapter of the algorithms book and let's try to like solve some problems together? I'm like, oh, that seems like, yeah, you can kind of feel it. It's like algorithmic. It's like solving some problems, and it's like maybe helping you prepare for job interviews later on. I'm like, okay, I can feel that sort of reading group. Every week you meet and talk about algorithm stuff.
Yeah, because algorithms is a skill, right? It's not purely recall. It's you
Yeah.
have to apply it, and so if you're practicing together, it's like chess, right? Like let's do some chess exercises together. I can see I can see the value in that. I, and I also agree with you that some of these other reading groups that you were describing, they seem less likely to succeed.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I'm not bashing on reading groups. Maybe I'm just not a good reader.
no, I agree. Like if you all have different motivations and like 12 people in the room reading the same paper and it's not really relevant to say five of them, like
Yeah.
I can see why it would feel like a waste of time.
Yeah, and like I mean, I'm sure there are situations where reading groups work really well, right? So, like, Oprah's book club, and Oprah recommends these like really heartwarming books about overcoming adversity or whatever, and like people read it and it's like yeah, like they kind of commiserate and like it's like Mother's Day today, so it's like probably there's like themes about motherhood and stuff, and like it's Mother's Day and mothers are reading like oh yeah, like we relate to this. We kind of use the book as a way to bond with other people. Like I could feel that has a function, right?
Yeah. Is that how I didn't know how Oprah's book club like how does it work like
I don't know. I'm just my own stereotypes probably, but like I imagine there's a genre of books, right, that I guess I associate with Oprah's book club even without knowing. But like these sorts of, chicken soup for the soul, feel good, inspirational personal stories of triumph and like something about probably about family or kids or like relationships, those things, and like people can relate to it and then like they can get together and talk, or like a reading. I can imagine like a reading group for like a special group, right? So I don't know, like if you're like an Alcoholics Anonymous or something, or an addiction recovery group, then like we, for the next week, our assignment is to read a book or just like read a pamphlet, right? Like not just a book, but like here's a pamphlet that Alcoholics Anonymous released, and it talks about like the stories of people who've recovered and the hardships they've suffered and trying to recover from being an addict. And then people read it and then they share their stories like, yeah, I can relate to this. Like this was tough for me. And I mean, it's very similar to the business thing, right? It's like when people actually have some reason to relate to it and inspiration to read it, they like it's the right time for them, right?
yeah. I, I think that's good. Hey, Phil, what was the last book you read?
They're asking Donald Trump type question.
No.
What's the last book I've read? I mean, if you count Kindle stuff, right? I assume.
Yeah, for sure, for
Let
sure.
me try to pull it up. All right, pull up my trusty phone here. No, like despite all my saying I don't read books, I actually have a good amount of books on the Kindle. Let's see. Well, I'll actually tell you a book I'm reading now. I'm like for
Yeah.
reals. I'm reading a book about. It's called. Let me just. It's actually available for free online. Like the manuscript. It's called Watch Me Play. Let me just send you the link.
All right, cool.
Watch Me Play. Yeah, man, I actually do read. So I'm actually reading this now. It's on my iPad, and when I'm at the gym, I read it on the treadmill. I basically just read it at the gym a lot of times because I just like, put it on the treadmill. Why is my internet so slow? There we go. Yeah, so it's called Watch Me Play: Twitch and the Rise of Game Live Streaming. And it's an academic book. I mean, it's a book by a MIT professor, and it's about documenting this phenomenon of live streaming games on Twitch, and more broadly about gaming culture and how that came about. With I've always been interested in gaming. I've always been really interested in gaming. So like I'm reading this book, sort of for a reason, and for the reason is that one of my grad students is very interested in thinking about HCI research as it relates to game related things.
Mm.
And this is my, my equivalent of reading your business books. It's like I want to start understanding the space better, but it's not like an immediate thing. Like I got to write a paper about this book. It's just I want an overall general kind of lay of the land, and it's entertaining as well. So like I do have a reason for reading this. So it's not like thinking fast and slow.
Can you give some interesting tidbits from the book?
I've just started. A lot of it's just history right now. It's just kind of history. I mean, the big tidbit is just talking about television and like the rise of television as a medium and this whole game streaming thing and how people broadcast and watch, it has a lot of analogs to, to the old network television days of people being able to broadcast on TV. And how it traces through game culture back. I mean, I'm not that deep into it. I also read kind of slowly because I only read for like 30 minutes on the treadmill each day or whatever, right?
Are you jogging on the treadmill?
I'm walking. I'm walking, or I'm
Okay,
doing
okay.
elliptical. I'm doing elliptical, or I'm walking. Like, I don't do that much.
And what games does it talk about like in the early days?
It doesn't talk about anything specifically, but just genres, right? Like, so there's arcades, there's the LAN parties and the first person shooters. It doesn't talk about anything specific yet, but I'm sure when it goes to the streamers,
Oh,
it's kind of old, so I don't think it'll talk about like Fortnite. Again, Fortnite is like the biggest thing now
uh-huh.
for streaming, but I don't. I mean, I think this is like written 3 years ago, so probably it was like the first person shooter stuff of the day or the real time strategy things. But yeah,
Yeah.
it hasn't gotten into details. But I am reading a book right now. So the last book I read, oh, was this the Essentialism book? Hold on. Um, I read a few about Xerox Park, which was, entertaining, but also, somewhat work relevant because I can talk about it in classes and like talk about the history of personal computing. And yeah, some Xerox Park ones. And then this Essentialism one, which is a very self-helpy book that I mentioned before about, filtering out distractions. Very, this guy was on the Tim Ferriss podcast. It's one of those people that is on Tim Ferriss podcast. But I felt like that was actually good for me too, because I was at a point in my life and career where I wanted to hear that sort of stuff. So I guess whenever I do read, for the most part nowadays, it is for a reason, actually.
Mm-mm-mm. So, can you talk more about essentialism?
um, just give me a quiz right now. Yeah, I actually don't remember much about the book, but except that like it felt good at the time. Um, no, it was just more like reaffirming, just prioritizing. I mean, I don't know. It's I kind of have no real memories of it beyond just like head nodding, like yeah, it sounds good.
But it's subconscious, right? Like, yeah, you don't need to recall it for it to.
Yeah, I think so. No, I'm glad
Yeah.
I read it, and I think it got me to write some stuff as well because I was sort of reflecting on getting busier in my faculty role and figuring out how to balance responsibility versus saying no to things versus saying yes to things. And yeah, I think I wrote up some reflection, not about it, not like my book report of essentialism, but like I wrote up a thing about like, I can send you the link. I'll read it later, but it was informed by essentialism kind of, but it was about like reflecting on the last few years of faculty life, right? This idea of starting to get a little bit more senior and kind of balancing responsibility with freedom and such. And that was indirectly informed by this essentialism book, even though I don't mention it.
Mm-mm. Do you feel like you have more control over your schedule these days because you're more senior?
I think simultaneously yes and no. Yeah, I think that's the paradox, and I kind of go into that in this article. Yeah, so paradoxically, I think it's both yes and no, right? That I have more control in the sense of I can set things more, but then there's also more inputs, right? So like
Mm-mm.
there's more inputs. I have a bit more autonomy over how I arrange those inputs, but there's more coming in. It's like there's a conveyor belt that's just coming in really fast, but I'm the one, in charge of picking all the stuff off, right? I'm like the Amazon, distribution floor picker, right?
Hey, have you? I think we might have talked about this, but have you played the game Overcooked?
No. Is this one of those like frenzied mobile games where things are?
I think I played it on a console, but
Oh,
basically you're trying to prepare dishes for people,
oh, nice. Oh, yeah. I'm on the link right now. Okay,
and like a
like a
hamburger
team
requires
game.
a bun and the meat and the tomato.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh, it's like a conveyor belt thing.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great analogy. Yeah, I was thinking of I Love Lucy, but whoa, this is like in a food truck. Wow, look at that. Whoa, this is really cool.
Yeah. It's a party game, right? Like Mario Party or something. It's.
Yeah. But this is an analogy for my life now. Yeah, and it's mostly team based, or it's one person.
I've only played it in a team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. So then you can like blame others. This is great.
Yeah.
This is your chance to blame other people. Yeah.
Yeah, like before you hire someone, you can play a game of Overcooked and see whether you actually get along.
Oh my God, yeah. Or you can have them like play in the waiting room with like other, interview candidates, except they're like stooges, right? They're fakes, and like or with like the admins or whatever, and just kind of casually playing. You see it like if they're a bad sport or something, if they just like throw down the controller, or they're bad. All right, let's get this guy out of here.
Hey, dude, are we done for today?
Like I've had enough. I've had enough of WrestleMania. This is it. This is
Hey, are
it.
you ever gonna go to WrestleMania?
I don't think so. I have my Brock Lesnar shirt here. This is in honor of WrestleMania. My friend got this, Jermaine. So Brock Lesnar
Whoa.
was both in the WWE and in UFC.
Hey, how big of a fan are you of wrestling?
I'm actually a pretty big wrestling fan. I mean, back in the old days, I basically a lot on YouTube now. I just watch like old wrestling clips. So like I don't watch like new wrestling because I don't know
Oh,
anything.
okay.
But like in the 90s and stuff, I was definitely a fan. So like, but now I'm like seem really old because all I watch is like old wrestling news and clips.
So you've never paid a pay-per-view?
I don't think I have, but I think in high school I probably went to friends' houses. They have, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I went to friends' houses who have, yeah. I don't think my parents would let me pay back then. Yeah, I don't think my parents would pay for pay-per-view for wrestling back then. But yeah, my friends probably their parents paid.
But you followed in high school?
Yeah, I followed in high school, like pretty, for a few years. Yeah, like the whole late 90s WWF Attitude Era, that's when Stone Cold and The Rock. It was like it was a golden era, right? Late 90s. The anti-heroes. Yeah, it was a golden era.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so maybe that'll be the thing for next time with my Brock Lesnar shirt. Just signing off here. This is all sponsored right here. It says welcome to Suplex City here. Yeah.
That's a pretty cool shirt, dude.
I know. This is good. All right. Guess we're gonna sign off.
Okay, all right. See you, Phil.
All right, man. All right.